3 Hours Podcast. Welcome to part 2 of episode number 16. I have Cristian Plascencia with us here today from the Durable Athlete brand. Cristian, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, bro. Doing great. Thank you very much for having me here, for hosting. Such a great time. Anytime we can see your beautiful face.
Ooh.
You're looking buff as ever, looking mobile as ever, durable as ever, actually, we should say. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here, bro. Thank you.
Hey, man. Happy to have you on. And I'm really excited for today because in part 1 with Natalie Higbee, the co-founder of the Durable Athlete brand, and your girlfriend, I might add, she spoke a lot about nutrition and lifestyle. But today, Cristian, we get to talk about your passion, the thing that I've been seeing you absolutely crush for years, mobility, durability, if you could put it that way, and movement. So, little backstory, guys. Cristian and I used to work together at a gym called On It. I learned a lot from him there. He was many years ahead of me in regards to mobility, corrective exercise, even soft tissue work. So, Cristian, I wanted to start today off by asking you, Natalie mentioned you worked in a PT clinic in episode number 1 in high school. What got you into this mobility realm?
Yeah, definitely. So as a young kid at like the age of 12 or 13, I hurt myself playing basketball. You know, basketball even to this day is like a very, deep passion of mine. And I sprained my ankle, went to a physical therapy clinic. Luckily, my mom knew the owner of the clinic and knew the head PT of the clinic. And so when I went there, I don't know, there was just something about like the vibe and like the aura of just the place. And I don't know why at a young age, but my mind was kind of fixed on like, all right, like, what is it that I want to do when I get older, right? I think that's a question we all get, like when we're in elementary school, right? And we answer that and maybe have projects on like, who do you want to be and what do you want to be growing up? And so like that question I remember as like a young kid was like a pretty like at the forefront of my head. And so going to that clinic, again, it had just like the music I like to listen to. It seemed that people were just like almost playing sports. Like there was, baseball, football players, basketball players, all, every type of sport and just general population. So there was a wide variety of people in the clinic and they were all doing some sort of exercise, right? I didn't know what, the difference between a PT and an athletic trainer and a personal trainer and a strength coach at 12 and 13 years old, right? So I'm just kind of looking at it as almost like a gym. It looks like it's a place where it's a gym where people who might be a little hurt would come into. And so I remember leaving that day and I remember like just voicing that to my mom. I remember just telling her like, if I ever like had to pick a job or if I had to say I want to be something one day, like I think I want to be like working in like a PT clinic. I think that's just like something that I want to do. My mom is like very type A. And again, she knew like the people who ran that PT clinic. And so she that summer like signed me up to be an intern. And an intern at that time is like the towels, right? Like folding the towels, putting them in the freaking washer dryer, like wiping down certain places when they're done. But then maybe like my second or third year into it, I like started to like observe the PTs and then I would observe the PT aides and then kind of just see like, of course, the language that they're using at that time. I mean, I'm like 14, 15 years old. I don't fully comprehend everything that they're saying, but it starts to make sense usually when we would get like our hands dirty with like the PT aid, when we start doing certain exercises and then asking like, hey, why are we doing these exercises? Like, I thought they had to hurt this. Why aren't we doing something there? And so just kind of like, learning through just experience. Again, at that time, I think I like picked up my first anatomy book, which they just had on at the facility there. I maybe read through like half of it, but I remember like even to this day, like I don't think I really remembered anything from that book. I don't know if I really walked away with anything from that book other than just like, whoa, like this seems like a lot. And if this is a route I want to go down, like this is asking a lot. It just seemed like a lot of memorization. It just seemed like, you really had to be on top of what you were doing. And so that is kind of like where I guess like the basis and the foundation of where I'm at today and like what me and Natalie have built today. That's where a lot of it really stems from, is just having a passion behind like why, I guess. Always just kind of asking why and wanting to just understand stuff as much as I could, I guess, from different perspectives.
Wow. Yeah, I can hear it too, and I've seen it. I mean, your head's always in a book. You know what I mean? Like I've
Mm,
been fortunate, for those who are listening, to know Christian for probably 4 or 5 years now.
mm-hmm.
And I was around him a lot. Like when you're a trainer at a gym, which you and I both used to be, you spend a lot of time at that gym if that's your primary work, right? So, Christian would be there literally, guys, at like 5:30 a.m. reading a book before he did his mobility routine, and then training clients the rest of the day, working out. And him and Natalie were doing that together all the time. We actually filmed some videos together. I don't know if you remember, of you and I doing mobility routines together, the meathead plus the mobile guy. And it was a pretty good
I
time,
remember
man. That's cool to hear, though, that from a young age
that.
you were introduced to that. I think that's a cool experience. You mentioned something there that I want to dive into. You said that when you were young at 13, you didn't know that like PT clinics were different than gyms and different than
Yeah.
strength
Hmm.
and conditioning. And Natalie, on our first episode, talked a lot about durable athlete and the 4 pillars. I want to hear you kind of dive in and explain what durable athlete means to you, and maybe talk a little bit about why it was created.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what it means, I guess let me start, I guess, in reverse, why it was created. And it's funny, we were just talking about this yesterday. So I had a client and his name was Buckley. I know he still lives out here in Austin. You might know him.
Yeah.
And he was coming into On It consistently, bro, for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working in a private setting, so just on a one-on-one basis. And it just seemed like, regardless if he came in 3 times or 5 times a week, it was like he was at the same spot, and not just like physically, right? Physically, yes, like he was in the same spot, but mentally as well. It just kind of seemed like he was in a very similar position than when I first met him. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, bro, like as a personal trainer, you're not just working out people, right? Like you're hearing about their day. Sometimes, they're asking for some advice. Maybe you lend your 2 cents, and like it's a very impactful time, right? That you have, especially in a private setting, like on a one-on-one setting with the client. And so I remember, like, after Buckley, after about a year and a half, me and Nat just met, and she was like, "Man, it's interesting. Like that guy, I've seen him come in with you almost every day, and he kind of looks the same." And at first, I remember kind of getting a little defensive. I was like, "Damn, that's fucked up. Like you don't know where he was day one. You don't know what he's at to this
Yeah.
point." But I mean, she was right though. She was really right. Like spiritually, physically and mentally, like he was in the same spot. And I feel like a lot of that was coming from because we weren't respecting and we weren't emphasizing enough the holistic approach of being a human being, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, physical for sure, that's one piece of it. But like, what are you doing when you leave the gym, right? Like those other 23 hours of the day, what are you doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, if you're not, maximizing, optimizing, whatever word we want to use, like that, those 23 hours, that 1 hour in the gym, it is, I'm not going to say it's not fair to say it's not going to do anything for you, but you could be so much more, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
you could be benefiting from it so much more. And obviously you understand that. I know that, that's something that you preach in your own, unique way as well. But like, that was like the big, like, duh, yeah, you're right, like we're always talking about it, we're living it, like why aren't we preaching that with our clients? And I think at first it was kind of like, okay, how do we package something, right? Like working at a gym, being a salary employee for a gym at that time, how do we package something that, like, I don't know, encompasses that? How do we,
Yeah.
other than just texting them and stuff, right, about nutrition, about sleep, and about just like their stress, how are they mitigating their stress throughout their day and throughout their week? Like, how do we do that? And so that is, I think, where the durable athlete really stemmed from. Was if we're not respecting everything else in our life other than the fitness, then it doesn't really matter what we're doing in the gym. We're probably not going to get to where we want to go, right? We're not going to
Oh
want to
yeah.
get to our goals. And so I think for me, it's really just being able to look in the mirror. And this is something that I feel like I definitely had to go through personally. And I'm sure Natalie is in the same boat as me, where you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, okay, cool. Like I might have these goals and these things that I want to get to. And I need to kind of make sure that, it's okay to have aesthetic goals. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all I'm shooting for, right, then I really need to make sure my process is going to get me there. But I need to be okay with like the results of that, right? So if I want to have 5% body mass, right, and I want to be the most lean person in the entire world, I know that one, I mean, it takes a certain process, a very strict process to get there. But then two, like, what am I going to be sacrificing by trying to get to that goal? And I think that a lot of people, I think the 5%, body mass example is pretty extreme, but I think for a lot of people, it's like, hey, I want to be in better shape. I think that's a very general thing to say that a lot
Yeah.
of people would agree with.
Oh yeah.
And they don't really understand that getting in shape is more than just a six pack, right? What are we doing, throughout our day to ensure that our goals and our process, our daily process, are aligning with one another?
Yeah, man. And I love that too. I mean, obviously it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you and Nat on the 23 Hours podcast, is because a lot of what you guys preach on social media, which I'll include some links in which everybody can go follow Christian and Natalie. Highly encourage they do that. They're actually, some of the leaders, in my opinion, in the entire mobility, durability movement right now. You guys own that space, in my opinion. And you guys are doing the greatest job sharing that content as well. So I want people to go follow you guys. But the reason I wanted them to follow you, right, the why, is you guys embody everything that I preach to my clients and my coaches. Is like, you have to have a message that's more than just fitness, right? For me, yeah, the other 23 hours are important and that's great. But the thing that's always kept me coming back, which I think consistency is a pillar, right? Like, you have to keep showing up in order to have success in anything, in order to continue to grow and get better at that thing that you do. The whole aspect of 23 hours that means a lot to me now as like a business owner and an entrepreneur is like, that is the 1 hour a day I have to anchor myself in for the other 23 hours, right? Because you and I signed up, you started this brand as well, right? You signed up for a life that's a little bit more challenging than maybe some other routes that people take. That 1 hour that you spend a day on your physical fitness, even if those other 23 hours are super chaotic, that 1 hour is a time for you to be able to like have you time or flow or get into that state of meditation. And then, it serves as a catalyst for those other 23 hours as well. So people, how do you differentiate between that when like a client comes to you or somebody who touches the Durable Athlete brand? If they're like, hey, I have a really stressful other 23 hours. What are some of the things that you implement for these people to mitigate maybe what they're going through?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the best things that people can, especially if they're willing to make a change in their lifestyle, is starting really with sleep, right? And that was something, again, that I had to really look in the mirror and be honest with myself upon, which was, I think everyone's heard before that 8 hours of sleep is optimal, right? And maybe if people haven't, I feel like that is something I heard, at least from high school on, right? And hey, if you can get, more sleep, the better for you. But I think once I started to really learn like the detrimental effects of not getting like optimized sleep each night, man, that's not cool. There's so many things that it influences, right? Like, it's not, again, for sure physical, right? When we start talking about being able to influence like hormones, right, for growth and whatnot. But then you also start looking at what happens to like the brain in terms of just like memory and focus and attention. Like, it affects everything, right? And so if we had to be picky on one thing, I think one of the first things I would try to ask and shoot for is, what can we do? What does your sleep look like? Your sleep schedule look like right now? And what could we do to potentially optimize that? Let's say somebody is getting 8 hours of sleep. Let's say they're pretty consistent with their wake and their sleep time. So cool. I would say that the foundation is pretty much laid there. Then I'm going to be asking, okay, like, what does like the times that you're eating throughout the day? Like, one, are you eating enough? Right? Are you just skipping meals and running off of caffeine? Right? Or like, are you eating good whole foods? Right? Or are you kind of more of a fast food person or something that's just quick and easy? And are you just eating and constantly eating and working at the same time? Are you constantly in a rush, throwing yourself into that stress response all day long, when you're necessarily not supposed to be when you're eating, right? You want to be a little bit more in that parasympathetic, the rest and digest mood. So it's funny. Like, I think there's a lot of things that we could potentially pick on, But I think just trying to figure out and get a good glimpse of, I think sleep would be my priority, but then like the rest of the day. So things that you're already doing, where you're already making time, hopefully, to eat, right? And so how could we maybe win a couple minutes before you eat and a couple minutes after you eat, right? Are you most likely, probably not if they're coming to us, but what are you doing on those times where you find yourself super stressful in between calls? Or maybe when you have a 20 or 30-minute break, like what are you doing? Are you going on social media, or can you maybe lie down or sit down somewhere and do some breathing, right? I
Yeah.
think me and Nat are very aligned in, hey, anytime somebody can, get outside to go for a daily walk and start to use their breath to try to influence what, the state that their mind is in, and the stress response that's kind of going on throughout their system, like that's a very impactful and powerful time. And I think that's when people really realize that, like, I don't know, they get a little bit more empowered when they
Mm-hmm.
realize that, oh yeah, if I could start to change the way I breathe, or become a little bit more mindful in the way that I'm breathing,
Yeah.
or be a little bit more mindful about taking a 10-minute walk, during my day, right? I didn't, realize how much of an impact and how much of a positive difference that could make. So yeah, I guess I kind of just named off a plethora of different things,
It's good.
but that's where my head would kind of go in terms of just like the initial analysis and like assessment of like, what does your day to day look like? Where are maybe pockets of like higher stress times, and where do you have pockets of free time where we can maybe fit some things in? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. That's some key insight right there. And I know that you and Nat obviously have helped like thousands of clients to this day. You know what I mean? Like, and you've been in front of, we haven't even talked about all the athletes that you work with, right? Like you work with professional athletes, you work with youth athletes, you have a basketball academy, for God's sake, right? Like you're touching a lot of different niches with this same philosophy, and it works no matter who you are. Like everybody has to learn how to mitigate stress. Everybody needs to sleep more. Everybody needs to find habits that serve the other 23 hours of their life, right? Like for me, you mentioned the walk. I don't know if you saw that story, but I got fat, dude. When I started the gym management company, I crawled up to 240. Like when I left on it and started that business with those guys, right?
Yeah.
I gained weight, dude. Like for the first time in my life, like bad weight. You know what I mean? Like I'm a huge meathead, right? Like a muscle bound guy. And I just kept eating like, very high amount of calories, and I kept lifting the weights the same way. And I kind of left everything the same. And I didn't take into account that like my lifestyle had changed, and I was now a full-time business owner, which consisted of like constant meetings, constant phone calls, and sitting in traffic and stuff like that, right? Which as a trainer at a gym, you don't really go through that. You're like around that stuff all day long, and you're walking around racking weights. So I gained weight, dude. Like I got fat. I got a picture that I shared a few months ago on Instagram, and I was 240. And dude, just by implementing sleep, right? By focusing in on sleep and walking throughout my day, like being intentional about going and getting like a certain step count, I was able to drop like 20 pounds of weight in the matter of a few months, right? And I kind of lost it the wrong way. I cut my calories too fast, and I lost some muscle mass too, which kind of ticked me off. But I was able to crawl back up to like 225, look good, feel good. And actually, Dr. Vince Krepke, Vince, him and I worked together on that project, and now I'm on my way back up to 240, but this time a lot more in a healthy manner, so
Got you.
I just wanted to share that because I feel like, you were preaching that stuff to me years ago, right? But I didn't need to apply it at that time, like, because I was in a gym, I was a trainer, but your clients were applying it and having success with it. I appreciate that. And I love the habits. Natalie and I talked a lot about that, but from you and for our listeners, let's transition into mobility. Mobility is just like this term, right? And you mentioned PT clinic earlier. You mentioned strength and conditioning earlier, and you mentioned, maybe I'll add, corrective exercise specialists, which are like personal trainers that work in a gym to help people improve their movement capabilities. One of the chapters in my Muscle Gain Secrets ebook that I recently wrote, dude, the whole book starts with mobility. What is that to you? Like, I know why it's important for me, because like you can't really get full adaptation at a joint if you don't have access to certain ranges. That's kind of my thing. But to you,
Yeah.
What is mobility and how do you describe it to your people and its importance?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point that you bring up, right? There's, I think, a lot of different contexts to be able to perceive more mobility and different ways to explain it for the type of demographic and crowd and person that you're saying it to, right? So if I'm talking to, let's just say the category of an athlete, right? Let's say, even within that category of an athlete, let's say I have an 11-year veteran and then a rookie, right? Like the way I described it, the impact and the power of mobility and why we want to be doing it is going to be super different even between that same demographic, right? So, but I think the best way to put it, and I think that this is stays true amongst, regardless of what you do, and if you're a professional athlete or 9 to 5 athlete, right? Because everybody, that's, I don't know if Natalie had mentioned that to you, that little slogan, but we believe to be like everybody's an athlete, right? Everybody is expected to mentally and physically
Yeah,
perform on a daily basis,
I
right?
love that.
Regardless of what that looks like, everybody has to perform. If you're on this, path of wanting to be, the best version of yourself every day, right? And so what I would say though is just, I think of my 80-year-old grandma, right, who is still moving like to this day, walking up and down stairs. It's like her whole life, no one told her about mobility, but she has constantly been moving. And
Mhm.
she like is a chef. She does stuff outside. So I think just the ability to move your joints and the consistency of you being able to move your joints
Mhm.
through the ranges of motion that they were designed to move in is very important into the longevity and the vitality of like your life,
Mm.
right? Yeah, I think that it's not just physical as well. It's like it's mental, right? It's like, you know, our body being what compromised in the sense of how we can move it because of pain or because something is stiff or because maybe we've just never done anything and we've never done a single leg squat, we've never gone to the ground on one single leg, so therefore we're like very scary of that, like that takes an account to our mental as well,
Yeah.
right? I work with clients who one of the first things I ask every single day is just how you're feeling, how's your body moving, how's it felt since the last time we met. And people will like tell themselves like, man, I just feel like I'm just scared, like I'm just scared I'm gonna fall, or I'm scared I'm gonna hurt myself. I just kind of feel like sometimes like I just feel like I'm so stiff. And like that story that they tell themselves, I mean, let's
Mm.
just be honest, right? With some of those people that tell me that, it's true. They're 67 years old, they've never put the time right into wanting to do mobility or even working out in that sense. So it would make sense that if you have not taken care of yourself from a physical standpoint, right? If you're not taking your joints and your muscles through these full ranges of motion, you're going to get to a point where that lack of physical activity, right, and comprehension is going to start feeding into taking away from your mental capabilities and like where your mental is going.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think that mobility and on a completely different light, mobility is very different than just being the most flexible person in the room, right? I think that's a very important thing, especially for
Wait,
people who are
what's
maybe,
the difference then between you're
yeah,
saying there's a difference between
yeah.
mobility and flexibility? Is that what you just said?
There, there is
Okay.
no dash between flexibility and mobility. There is a plus sign because I think that they are two completely different things.
Oh,
Maybe just in the context that I have been, I've experienced, and what the way I kind of preach it to my community and the people that I'm able to serve.
okay.
I think one of the best ways, and I can kind of explain the difference again in my context, in the context that I experienced it, and the first person to tell me in this context was Dr. Andrea Spina, who started Functional Range Systems, I believe is what it's called now. We went to, I believe you went, right, Tyler? You've been to FRC, the
Yeah,
Functional Range Conditioning.
that certification and seminar changed my life, literally.
hmm hmm I would 100% second that, and I know Natalie would for sure be in the same boat. It's a great seminar, and it's a mobility seminar, very vaguely put. But what it does is it breaks down the difference between flexibility, right? It's just having, a freely moved range of motion, right? So can I move? Do I have good flexibility? Am I able to say, I can lock out my arm and take my arm back a specific amount and feel as if I can do it freely? and there's nothing maybe tugging, there's nothing that's maybe restricting me, there's nothing that maybe doesn't allow me to move my shoulder in that fashion, right? That is just flexibility. Simply put, just, having the range of motion to move something. And then the mobility aspect has that flexibility aspect in its definition. So it is, in part, mobility is the ability to freely move your body. But now what we want to add, right, is the ability to actually control that, right? And that word control, I feel like if we break it down even further, is like, do we have that neurological, control and activity in the certain range of motion while moving through it? So it's one thing to just kind of move something, but can we build up the intent, or do we have the intention to build up activation and actively turn on those fibers that we're looking to move and rotate through? Can we actually turn those on and ramp up the intensity of that activation from 0 to 100%? And then, that is, and it might sound, maybe to some listeners, maybe if they haven't spent much time with it, it might sound like, whoa, like that kind of sounds like a lot like 0 to 100% in ramping up activity. But it's just like being able to do a body weight squat, right? Can you drop, and drop into a bunch of body weight squats without thinking about it? 100%. But can you do like a 15-second squat, like taking 15 seconds to come all the way down to the bottom of your squat and then 15 seconds to come back up? That would be kind of like the difference right there, right? You just drop into something cool, but can you drop into something and turn on every little fiber in your body that is going to assist you in going down and going up with as much control and stability as possible?
Man. All right. We could go a million different directions with this. It was good.
Yeah.
It was really good. Thank you. And for the listeners right now, I want them to just have this mindset that I'm going to plug you in real quick. It's just about being durable. Like that's ultimately, if you do that and you're intentional with your movement, you're going to be less prone to injury, right? You're going to be more durable at the end of the day. And I think that's where your whole durability philosophy comes from, is like, it takes strength, it takes mobility, it takes flexibility, but it takes a certain equation to accomplish all of these things in the right amount. So what is that equation for you, dude? Like you lift all the time. Like you're not scared to put 500 pounds on your back or deadlift, right? I meet so many, and I explained this to Natalie, like so many practitioners, I'll say, like whether it be like an FRC or like even chiropractors or these different verticals of the health and wellness market that have differing opinions on strength training and that have differing opinions on range of motion and flexibility, to mention yoga for a second, right? Where's your perspective on that? Like if somebody's going to become optimally durable, what do they need to do in each of those facets to accomplish that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Super good question. Love that question. I think it really starts, man, with like the goal of the individual, right? So what is like your durable athlete recipe? I think that's all dependent upon like where is it that you're trying to get to. So let's take like an athlete, for example, and then let's take just like a 9 to 5 employee, right? Like an executive employee or whatever it may be, right?
Sure.
So I'll say, like with the athlete, like, okay, what is it that you're asking from your body on a daily basis, and how, like, what does optimal performance look like to you so that you can continue to do what you're doing for you and your family at a high level, right? We can take that same question and apply it to both people. So it doesn't matter what you do, right? And so for an athlete, like a basketball guy, let's say, for example, he has to be able to sprint. He's got to be able to stop on a dime. He's got to be able to jump, right, repetitively, but also jump high, for each individual jump. He's got to be able to have, we can go down the list with all these different things, right? And so within all that, yes, those are things that he has to do. But then I like to kind of look at that and take a step back and think, okay, these are the things that we want to do at glancing with our eyes. These are the things that we want to see. But we have to get things right structurally first. So we got to make sure the internal is working right before we can start to expect those things on the external to look fast and agile and all the big words that we want to use, right? So with an individual like that, we need to be able to start off with a very simple, especially early off season, like, can you move your body, with no weight, irrespective of no weight? Can you move through just simple movement patterns? Can you lunge the way I would like for you to lunge, to where we ask your ankle and your hip to work at a certain level? Can you squat the way we would like for you to squat? You know, again, asking the ankle and the hip and the torso and everything to move our way. And then from there, yes, let's strength train. You need strength training for at least 8 weeks. We got to be able to fit that into like a pro guy's off season, potentially even more than that. But if we only have so much time, you're going to need strength training. And then eventually we're going to have to start doing all those jump things with you. We're going to have to start doing the landings. We're going to have to start doing the variation and bounding and sprinting and stopping on a dime, because although in the game that's what you're going to be doing, we have to be able to expose your body to it in training to make sure that your body trusts that it can stop, that it can jump, that it can run. So all that stuff, yes, but at the basis of all that, again, is the internal and the structure. And so on a daily basis, like, best believe, like, you have our daily cars, which is like what we learned from FRC, right? You have your daily
Love those,
joint
bro.
mobility. It doesn't matter. Love them. You need them. It doesn't matter like who you are, what you do. That is like your daily check-in to just make sure that everything is talking to each other and we're at least our baseline every day to get better, right? Like, if we don't move our joints through full ranges of motion, right, and we don't have that communication between our brain and our physical body on and going, then like we're not in a good state to train, right? So that's
100%.
kind of like what it would look like for like an NBA guy or some a basketball guy. I would throw in, obviously, you know, at different times of the year, right? We're gonna have a certain switching with like yoga days and track days, right? So at certain times of the year, we're gonna do maybe a little bit more yoga. And on those other times, as we get closer to season, we're still doing all of our joint mobility, but we're gonna start exposing ourselves to more like, you know, high power outputs, that when you get to your season, everything feels like it can move and it can actually work, right? And structurally, your tendons and your ligaments and your soft tissue, everything is super durable, right? If you want to put it that way. Now, if you
It
look at the
sounds
other
like,
person,
before you get to the other person, guys,
yeah,
Christian works with professional NBA guys. He works with professional MLB guys. He worked with me with professional NFL guys. You were the dude that took care of all of their durability stuff. It sounds like durability, or your methodology behind mobility, is also maintenance. So in periods in which I'm focusing on other stuff, if I do the stuff that Christian and Natalie are sharing with me, I will maintain, if not improve, range of motion and flexibility just by doing those drills every day.
100%. 100%. The same drills that we start off with day one and is your warm up for day one is I swear, the same warm up that we're doing the last day of the year. And it's the same routine that we would have done before every workout. And it's the same routine that I would have pushed people to do. All my athletes have access now, either on our app or on like an Excel sheet that I've created for them. They all have access to our warm ups. So they know it any single day, even guys that are overseas right now, like, they go through that same warm up and they use that same warm up, and their body understands and knows how it's going to feel every single time we get done. And that's a great way to contextualize it too. It's like, it's maintenance, even when we're not spending those extra recovery days, like the yoga days or the pool, Barton Springs pool days. Like, even if we're not getting a lot of that in, we know that we can go to our daily warm up, and that's always going to make them feel like primed, potentiated, and like ready to take on their practices or their rest of the day, you know?
That's awesome, brother. That is so good. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to contextualize it. So hit me with the 9 to 5er, right? This is a completely different context. And I love that you and Nat do that with everything y'all talk about. Is context matters. So now let's transition. Like, if I'm just an executive or somebody who sits the majority of my day, what does my mobility routine or durability routine look like?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, it's important to really understand that, let's say it's a 9 to 5 individual, and let's just say they're already pretty physically active. Let's just say they're already going to a CrossFit gym, and there's nothing wrong with CrossFit. I'm just using CrossFit. Like, they're going to a CrossFit gym.
I think you just threw a shot.
Yeah, no, I subliminally did, but I said I didn't. So, like, technically, I don't know if that counts.
I don't know. You just made it awkward, but whatever.
I know. I was gonna say something else, and then I just, but it's Sunday. I don't know. I'm working slowly.
Oh, I love it, man.
Um, so, but yeah, so let's say they're already going and working out 5 days a week, right? And hitting the workout of the day when they go in, right? It's not that there's nothing wrong with going to those workouts of the day, but at some point, right, we usually see people who are very physically active, but have never really had a practice of like down regulation. They haven't really taken like their recovery days are, don't do anything, right? So it's like, cool, I'm either hitting it hard at a workout that's at 1,000% intensity, or I'm over here literally at like zero, Netflix and chill all day. Again, nothing wrong with Netflixing and chilling. I do that almost every Sunday, so I understand how that goes. But there's gotta be the extremes are like, I think, where people tend to see a lot of those discrepancies come up, and a lot of those areas that they kind of fall short in, right? And so if you know that you're not a professional athlete, right, there's a couple of different routes. One, do all the workouts need to be at 1,000%, right? Or can we undulate, which you talk about a lot? Can we undulate the intensity of our workouts and the purposes of our workouts,
Oh
right?
yeah,
I think that's one route people can go, right? Or
absolutely.
okay, cool, let's keep, you love working out at 1,000% because it's your way to just de-stress after a long day. Cool, let's do that. But can we maybe start to work in a mobility warm up? And can we do some box breathing at the end of each one of your workouts? And then
Hmm.
maybe like after a couple months, once they start to get that down, well then, hey, during your box breathing, can you maybe hold a pigeon stretch? And then before you know it, they're stretching before every workout, right? They're stretching after each workout. They're doing a breathing decompression after each workout. And then maybe after that, hey, can we maybe now designate Saturday to be your yoga day, where
Mm.
maybe you just kind of go into your room at your own time that you feel like is the best time for you, and can you put on a 20-minute follow along and hit a yoga flow followed by some box breathing, right? And then
Mm.
on Sunday, like, can you maybe go outside and take a 20-minute walk at some point in your day, even if it's 5 minutes, 4 times throughout your day? Can you just spend 20 minutes walking outside today,
Yeah.
right? And so I think understanding that, okay, what does stress look like in an individual's life, professional basketball player or everyday 9 to 5 person? What are the
Hmm.
stresses of their daily life? What are they expected to do on a daily basis? So how can we make sure that whatever we give them at least gets them to do what they got to be able to do every single day, and
Oh
then
yeah.
kind of build almost like a protective. I think that's kind of like a little bit like what durability kind of means to me too, is like I see a picture of like this protective cushion around like the baseline of what you got to do. So it's like this space in between here is like your wiggle room space. That's the amount of
Yeah.
space where like shit's gonna go haywire. You get a ticket, I don't know, your Instagram account just deletes on you, like your email list just goes blonkers. You don't know where it's at. It just like all those things that happen kind of push like our baseline of stress like outward. And depending upon how much wiggle room we have is gonna dictate like, okay, we just took a couple shots, but like we're gonna get back up and we're fine. It was one day, I had a bad couple hours, but I'm cool. Tomorrow I'm hitting it hard. Or is it like, damn, I'm gonna let this affect me for the next week and a half, and it's gonna put me in it's gonna like throw me into a fucking pit, and I'm gonna need about a month to get out of this,
Yeah.
right? That is like what the durability is, right? And that can be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all those different contexts, all those different pillars of our life can
Yeah.
be said to that same thing. Do we have that wiggle room through our daily lifestyle because of what our daily lifestyle was? That is what our daily lifestyle gives us, is that wiggle room, our consistency with the daily routines, even on the days that we're feeling great. We're doing it because we're doing it to create that wiggle room for when shit does go haywire. We know how to bring us back to our baseline, and we know how to get back to where we are and like what our purpose is.
Yeah, man. That's a really good way to put it. I've actually really honestly never heard it explained that way, but it sounds like, there is a threshold of some sort for people
Right.
in the other 23 hours in which if they exceed that threshold, there's going to have to be strategies and tactics in place to
Right.
to cater to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
want to hear you talk a little bit about this you mentioned box breathing in there, you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
a mobility, you mentioned yoga as well. I don't think a lot of people know the
Yeah.
difference between yoga and mobility. What is, so like, a mobility routine before we work out, is this the stuff that you and Nat post on y'all's channels with the joints being taken through the full extent of their ranges of motion? Is that what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Okay.
I think there's different strokes for different folks. Like some people
Oh.
want just individual movements, right? Maybe some people, like you said, the yoga deal. Maybe some people have a background in that, and so they want something that's like a little bit more dynamic. It isn't
Mm-hmm.
one movement and then one movement and then one movement. But yes, for the most part, doing like those videos that we post on our social media, and the little swipe through, and you have 2 or 3 movements to look at for each individual joint. Like, yes, that is kind of like what our warm up and what our mobility would look like. Is really, again, not just the moving through full ranges, but it's making sure that we're putting the tension between 0 and 100%, that we're ramping up tension throughout our body. And so that can ramp us up for our workout or for the rest of our day or whatever it is that we're about to get into.
I love it, man. I love it. Thanks for elaborating on that. And I want people to
Yeah.
go to y'all's channels and follow y'all. Like on Instagram, you guys post a ton of stuff that I
Yeah.
use very frequently. So you guys go do that. But let me hear from you on this concept of mobility. Let's stay here if you're cool with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in regards to somebody who has no pain, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
me, I've finally gotten to the points where I don't have chronic pain in any of my joints. I
Nice.
still don't really move that well at certain joints. I don't know if it's like because I'm muscle bound, right? And maybe,
Right.
you know, with my shoulders specifically, it's getting harder to get overhead just because there might be soft tissue work that needs to be done, or maybe the muscle is actually blocking proper shoulder flexion. I don't know. What It's all context, okay? But what would
Mm-hmm.
you say to
Mm-hmm.
somebody who doesn't really have chronic pain for their mobility routine? Is the durability that you and Natalie preach, is it applicable to just simply do that a few times a week? Maybe not in every warm up, maybe just a few times a week sprinkled in, like you mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
after a workout. On Sundays, like you mentioned, do some yoga in order to maintain where I am right now. I think a lot of the industry doesn't talk about maintenance of anything, right? Maintenance of muscle mass, maintenance of your fat mass, maintenance of
Mm-hmm.
your flexibility, maintenance of mobility. What's your philosophy on like maintaining ranges of motions?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. I think one way you start talking about maintenance, right? One way that we can start to, like yourself, someone who is not in pain, somebody who feels like they're doing their due diligence and trying to do some mobility on a daily basis pre-workout, right? Let's just say at least pre-workout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, is like really trying to evolve the way that you're training, right? So how we train as well. I don't know if many people ever think about this in this context, but taking the cycle, right, or even just taking a week within your cycles that you're going through, and maybe just clearing some lighter weight but bigger ranges of motion. So maybe you're somebody who's been going through, partial ranges of motion on their squat, but obviously pushing some big heavy weight. Cool. There is a very specific reason why people would want to be doing that and reaching a specific goal. But what if we maybe take 1 week, right, or one workout or 2 workouts or however long we want to, and it's almost an experiment, right? Like how often do I need to throw this in to just kind of make me feel like my body is at a good baseline? Why don't we start to make our some of our workouts kind of expansive in the ranges of motion that we're working in, and maybe relatively lighter in load, just because of the novel ranges, right? Just because of we don't want to shock our system and try to keep up with the head, big weights that we use on something that's maybe more partial range. So for example, I think one of the best ways to do it is, for me personally, I think this is like where I'm at right now is like, okay, I'm busy just like you are, right? Me and Nat stay busy throughout our day. Sometimes we don't have that extra 30 minutes before a workout to warm up, or the extra 30 minutes after a workout to be able to decompress. Shit happens sometimes. You got to jump on a call. You got to get across town at a certain time, or whatever it may be. Life happens type of deal. And so I think what a really important thing to do is, as quality control, is to put those like bigger ranges of motion in the auxiliaries of your workout, right? If you need to, if you don't have the time for it, or also just making certain workouts just no weight and picking like 3 different movements and just going and working big ranges of motion. you know?
Oh yeah.
I know it's kind of like a general statement, right? But I think there's a lot of different ways you can do that. I mean, for some people, maybe it's, hey, I don't want to change my workout. Maybe it is, hey, for my warm ups, I just want to be able to give me, 10 movements that I'll do on a daily basis. Like it doesn't matter what, if it's upper body, lower body, whatever. I'm going to do these 10 movements every single day before every single workout that I do. I would you really can kind of consider that the most important part is just consistency, right? The way like our soft tissue, the way our fascia and our joints and our ligaments and tendons respond is to like doses, consistent doses over lengthier periods of time. You would probably be able to give a better projection of time than I would, but I feel like tendons and like fascia and soft tissue is almost like 6 months, upwards of like 6 months sometimes to be able
Yeah.
to adapt to like, right? Am I right? I know it's, put it this way, our soft tissue, the way our soft tissue responds to, as opposed to like a fascia or a tendon or like a ligament compared to a muscle is very different, right?
Sure.
Like the way how quickly a muscle can adapt is very different than how a joint or how the soft connective tissue could develop and adapt.
Sure.
So I just think really the biggest thing with that is just consistency, And again, like you said, it just all depends on the individual. Where are they looking to put this into their daily schedule? Where do they want to put it? Where are they willing to take the time? And how do they feel like adherence to this aspect or this mobility practice will be able to stay for as long as it can in their routine?
I love that, man. And I love it because you're avoiding any like dogmatic approach to one size fits all, like so many brands in the industry try and do because it's effective for marketing, right? It's easy for me to throw
Right, right.
rocks at what you're doing and position myself as the expert. That's just an easy way to market. But you and Nat kind of avoid that. And I think you guys have built like a true tribe of people that are 100% bought into you two as individuals, not even as the brand, right? You guys are like the attractive characters for that brand, and I love how you all embody that. That's why I wanted to have you guys as some of the first guests I've ever had on my show. I had Dr. Vince on here for one episode because we did a special offer for an audience of mine. But that was why we did that, right? You and Natalie are the first ones on here outside of that group, because I love that you guys aren't just like, hey, this is the way it is, right? It's not.
Right,
Nothing is like
right.
that. If you understand the human body, you know that we really don't know anything at all. And I can't tell you how long it's going to take your tissues to adapt to like flexibility or mobility adaptations. I personally don't know. I know that a lot of the literature says it takes like upwards of 6 to 12 months, which sounds like a really long
Yeah.
time for somebody to get results. And it's not sexy, right? Like that's not
Yeah.
sexy at all, bro. We live in a
Nah,
microwave
nah.
culture. People wanted that yesterday, not 6 months from
Yeah.
now. So how do you
Fact.
keep people bought in? I mean, I'll ask you that. Like doing a
Yeah.
mobility routine, I told Nat this, dude, I don't enjoy that. Like personally, I really don't like doing that stuff. I hate stretching. I actually get so parasympathetic when I stretch that it actually irritates me.
Yeah.
This is really weird. That's how sympathetic I am on a daily basis, though. So, like, how do you get people like me? I'm bought in now, but like, what's your method
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
order to influence these people? Like, hey, you need to do this.
Yeah, I think kind of finding, I know it may sound funny, but like finding like their weak point, right? Like why is it that you even came to me in the first place? Right? And so for a lot of people, right, they were in pain and they were tired of not being able to do X, Y, and Z. And so I think it's just always kind of bringing it and tying that back, right? I think that's another big piece that coaches, another hat that we wear, right, is like cheerleaders, right? But also reminding them that, hey, this is where you started. Right? Remember, this is where you came. This is where you were at when you came to me. This is where you're at right now. It might not feel like you're anywhere. It might feel like you're one step out of the gate, and it's been 6 to 8 months, right? But reminding them, hey, aren't you sleeping better? Or hey, aren't your lifts getting a little bit easier? Or, hey, didn't you say that the last blood test that you ran was, showing a better state? It's like trying to remind them of their wins, trying to remind them of those small things that they have gone through up until this point, and then reminding them that, hey, like it's just consistency. And that's something that me and Nat really established in the very start of our relationships with these people, is being super blunt, because we understand that we're not for everybody. Like you said, this is not for everybody. So if we can at least get them to buy in on day one and be like, yep, I'm down, fucking count me in, I'm consistent, I'm gonna be there, I'm the dog, and they're kind of getting into those phases of like, I don't really know, like, you know, I'm just like kind of like getting into like that Debbie Downer mode, which I will say has happened a lot lately, especially with COVID. I think that's just bigger than what we're doing with them. I think it's just other stuff that's going on in their lives as well. Like, I think it's just consistently reminding them again, like why you came here, what your goal is, and we are getting there. We just got to stay in it. We talked about it day one. We're at day 60, and like, let's not drop the ball now.
Especially with pain, man. Like you guys signed
Yeah.
up to help people is something that is a very, very chaotic industry. When you talk about the healthcare industry, people, when they get hurt, where do they go? Like they go probably to their primary care physician, right? Which
Yeah.
I don't know if I told Natalie on the last podcast, dude, I was like, doctors are awful. I said that on recording. I should probably take that back. There's not like, there's a lot of good doctors, but like, I don't know if you've
Right.
had this experience, man, but anytime I had like a soft tissue injury and I went to a traditional doctor, like I got no value from that. And
Yeah.
to have those conversations with them, they would just recommend that I go to the PT clinic to start doing rehab, right? So I would go to the PT clinic, and I think you have to have a referral to do that.
Yep.
So I understand why it is set up that way. And insurance and stuff gets involved, but you know, it never really fixed me, right? I would end up doing they didn't understand where I was. I was a very, you and I are abnormal. We train a lot, right? We've been training for
Mm-hmm.
years consistently. They are used to seeing patients that are probably able to be progressed by doing those baby ass drills, to be honest.
Yep.
Those
Yeah.
drills don't do shit for somebody like me, right? Like I
Right.
do those
Yeah.
already. I need like
Right.
progression, right? So by going to a
Facts.
PT, I'm actually regressing if they are not familiar with what my training history is.
Right.
You and Natalie are in that space. So the next question I wanted to share with you, I just talked a lot of noise about how the healthcare industry is set up. Where do you guys fit in to that kind of pile, that mess, as I would call it? If somebody's in
Yeah.
pain, can they go to you guys instead of going? I know we shouldn't say instead of going to a
Right.
doctor. Go to your
Right. Right.
doctor.
Right.
We
Totally.
didn't do what the doctors did. They're medically certified. But people can come to you guys and, in my opinion, get alleviated from pain without using pills or any of the other trash tactics that they use. In my opinion, what's your perspective
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree in the sense that there have been plenty of people, and this dates back all the way until like upwards of like my first year at On It, and to this day, where we get people, you know, last straw, right? Hey, I've gone to PTs, I've gone to a doctor, they're saying surgery, right? Or whatever the heck it may be. Hey, what's like another good one, for example? Like, hey, I'm not, you know, I've been to PTs. They told me I just got to go get stronger. I've gone to other, you know, personal trainers. It's helped me for a little bit, but something just like isn't right. And so, yeah, where we kind of fit within all that is, I mean, we worked with clients, you know, going into surgery. For example, Liz Brett, I know you remember Liz. She was a client of mine at On It. Like she was going
Yeah,
in to
man.
get a complete hip replacement. So we worked for like the first 5 months pre hip replacement, and that was like apparently after, you know, when she got her surgery done, and they had a scope pre surgery and post surgery. They had mentioned that all of her work prior to that, to the surgery, was like the most beneficial thing she could have ever done for her hip. That her hip bone actually looked more like healthy, like it had a better hip hygiene or joint hygiene because of just all the scar tissue. The difference in like that 5 month period was nuts. Like doctors like were like, whoa, like you should have been doing this for like a long time. You probably wouldn't even need a hip replacement. And so
Mm.
like just to hear things like that is just so interesting, especially coming from people who are administering these type of deals, right? But yeah, I mean, I guess for us it's just really trying to figure out, one, not trying to step on toes. That's very important, right? We get a lot
Yeah.
of referrals from PTs and doctors. So like we don't ever really want to step on toes, but we also know and very confident in like what we can do and like where our limitations are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The things that we can get people to feel with just like a foam roller and some breathing are probably 10 times better than what people are feeling off a pain pill and off of, whatever therapy that they're having to go through, right? And whatever thing that they're probably having to deal with.
Yeah.
And then even to like the other same, like surgery sometimes is the only way to fix certain things, 100%. And some of that
Yeah.
stuff is way over my head because we're not clinicians and we're not doctors.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can see somebody and be like, wow, like you can't move your hip whatsoever. You have absolutely no clue what you're doing. There's a lot of low hanging fruit here. And I mean, I have a couple clients that have their was it forgot L4 L5, yeah,
Yeah.
L4 L5 like seized, where they or the joint, or what do they call it? There's a certain name for it, but basically the joint space is like completely seized up together because
Yeah.
he was having terrible back pain. Yes, and I think it was just because he never had to move his pelvis. The little pelvic gyrations that me and Natalie do that people think are super super funny. Like, no, there's like actually some merit to that. Like, our joints and our lower back does not get a lot of blood flow. So like we got to be able to move those certain joint spaces, and that goes for everything in our whole body. So I'm sorry, I brought up that example is because he's had his back fused. No one's ever had him do these movements, and now he's feeling 10 times better. And he's like, wow, my body doesn't feel these aches and pains in all these different places like it used to.
Yeah.
So like, it's kind of like f man. Like maybe all these people didn't have to go through these unfortunate situations, and maybe if all they did was just get ahead of the curve and just start to instill some of these movements into their daily routine, that could have been the best maintenance for them, right? Even if they started when they were 30, and you can build for that for 20 years. I mean, man, that's going to be doing wonders for your body.
I'm
So
with it,
I guess
man.
in a roundabout way to answer your question, I think we're kind of like everywhere and in between,
Yeah, I
right? Like
agree.
obviously we're not clinicians, right? Like we can grab people after surgery, we can grab people pre-surgery, we can grab people and if professional athletes and get them ready to go out and play, for a competitive season. Like I think we just are trying to learn the principles of everything that we're trying to administer and trying to do it at the best way we can, going off of where the client is and where they want to go. Always understanding where they at, where they want to go, and how much time obviously do we have to get that done.
I love it, man. And I think that's where you guys are too. And I definitely I've tried to refer people you guys' way who are dealing with specific issues related to soft tissue or anything in that realm. I think I think I could kind of back up and correct myself. I love doctors. I love the medical community. When I was at UT, like I was working on a cadaver in the Dell Medical School with some MDs, people who were like a year out from finishing their residency and becoming real doctors, surgeons.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working on the bodies. And I remember making a comment about like the lat insertion on the humerus or something like that. And one of them was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like, whoa, like one of the medical doctors was like, why does this one look different than that one? And like, I just simply pointed out that like it was, a larger male who had muscular hypertrophy, a significant amount, and an older woman, right? The two different bodies. And they were like, wait, like the tendon grows in conjunction with the muscle. And I was just kind of like, man, like you're about to go like, y'all don't know anything about the musculoskeletal system. Y'all know zero. And I don't think that a lot of the general population understands that when they go to their general practitioner, when they go to their primary care, whatever, they're not getting educated on nutrition and they're not getting educated correctly on taking care of the musculoskeletal system, which is where you
Yeah,
and I are experts in, right? That's where the strength and
you're right.
conditioning community, that's where the corrective exercise specialists, that's where the fascial stretch therapist, that's where we live in that realm,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those
Right,
tissues.
right.
We deal with tendons, we deal with muscles, we deal with fascia. Anything outside of that is outside of our practice, right? Like we don't deal with
Yeah,
ligaments. We can't fix
right,
those. We can't
right.
fix joint integrity issues, right? We can't go in with a scaffold and fix that stuff. We can only use movement to correct tendons, to correct soft tissue. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's kind
Yep.
of how I
Yep.
look at it. So
Yep.
I wanted to back up and not sound like a total know-it-all or anything like that. Like I
Yeah.
definitely don't know everything. I just don't like when people get discouraged after they visit their primary care physician and feel like there's no hope. I want people to know that they can go to the Durable Athlete brand and get help, like really good help. So I appreciate that, man. I wanted to wrap up here. I don't want to take a lot more of your time. I wanted to hear about what you and Natalie are doing right now. Over the past few years, I've seen you guys literally grind it out. Like y'all post so much content, so much value, and you guys, I feel like, have just reached the point of critical mass where you guys' brand is about to take that huge jump. And I'm really excited to see it. But y'all just launched something, and I want to talk about it
Yeah.
briefly. Y'all launched an app, and Natalie and I talked about it a little bit. She gave a lot of insight into like the lifestyle and nutritional stuff that's on there. But what is the stuff we talked about today? Why do they need to go check out that app in terms of mobility and movement?
Yeah, totally. So first of all, thank you very much for the compliments. Love you, bro. Love you. Regardless, at the end of the day, I'm super excited that we were able to start our whole journey together at
I
On
know.
It, and we are where we are now. And it's funny because you talk about us grinding it out. I mean, you're no different, bro. It takes one to know one, right? Like it takes one. It takes a grinder to know when someone's in the grinder as well. So
Appreciate that.
I mean, you're on the same wavelength that we are at, brother.
You fix
Um,
my ankles, dude.
but
I'll always love you.
I appreciate you, bro. Well, it's been your consistency that's gotten you through that. It was maybe me just pushing you in the direction of a couple movements, but it's your consistency that drives that.
100%.
But yeah, I think, we've basically have come to the spot of like, okay, there's all these things and all these, like we've talked about today, all these things that we can do for people: sleep, their breathing, their nutrition, their movement. There's all these things that we can do, and we want to help them with everything. But of course, business would say, no, pick one thing and be really good at that, and try to, provide as much value as you can in that one thing. And so me and Nat really sat down about a year and a half ago, and I'm like, okay, mobility and movement. That is probably like one of the biggest things that people are coming to us about with questions. They like the content and whatever it may be, right? So how can we create something that is unique to us? So it's stuff that we're already doing. It's things that we feel comfortable teaching. It's things that we are doing for ourselves and our clients. And how can we put that out to people that we do not get to serve because they don't live in Austin, Texas, or maybe they just can't afford like our one-on-one session rate, right? And so it's very simple. We're like, okay, well, what do we do on a daily basis that feels the most authentic and true that we can pass to them? Well, we have a daily workout. I mean, we try to work out every day, and sometimes it's a flow, sometimes it's heavy lifting, sometimes it's swimming, it's running, whatever it may be. But then we also have a daily mobility routine. And that is, I guess, a big part of what we've been talking about today, right? It's not about doing the best movement in the world. It's not about finding the best 5 hip drills you can do, right? But it's about doing whatever 5 drills that you are doing on a daily basis,
Yeah,
day in
dude.
and day out. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So if I gave you a list of 5 movements and I had you do it for 365 days in a row, that could get potentially boring for somebody who has never done anything mobility. You're just starting out, right? So we have basically gone in, and every single day for the year, we have built out like a daily mobility routine and then a daily workout routine, right? And
Wow.
so what we did is we put all that within an app to where literally like today is, what is the 21st today? 22nd. Sunday, November 22nd. On our app, that's be one of the first things you see. You click on it and you see that we have a full body or an upper body or a lower body focus routine for you that day. The videos are on there. We teach you and explain to you how we want to do each movement. They're not 5 minutes long. We try to keep each video at about a minute. Luckily, we talk about these things a lot, so it's kind of just clockwork for us when we're doing instructionals. And yeah, man, that is like the cream of the crop within the app. That is like one of the like MVP, the most viable product we wanted to get out to people, right? And so we have all that, but then we also have things like follow along. So maybe you're like, yo, I just want to do like a yoga flow. We have like a flow section on there. Hey, I just want to do maybe something that's like a little bit more like workout intensive, like an active recovery workout, something that kind of makes me feel like I got to work out in as well. We have a complete section for that as well, right? And everything is rooted in full ranges of motion. Everything is rooted in, okay, yeah, let's do the sumo squat, but we want you to do the sumo squat our way. And we're going to make you work in ranges that are probably very uncomfortable. And we want you to do push-ups in the workout, but we want you to do them in our context with our intention, with our, 2 cents in each one of it and each one of the movements. And I think that is what will distinguish us between whatever else is out there that has to do with mobility and workout. Is it
Yeah.
the attention to detail? Because intention and consistency drives adaptation. You know that better than anybody else.
Ooh. Repeat that one
Yeah.
more time.
Yeah. What did I even say right there? Intention and consistency drives adaptation.
Dang, dude. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard it said that way before, but that's amazing.
I was about to
Um,
say, I mean, I don't know.
okay, so that app, dude,
Yeah.
first of all, everybody needs to go do it. And I'm going to give you my reason why. I don't know of anybody else out there. There's a lot of mobility gurus, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't know anybody else out there who has taken all of that information, which is just super confusing, even for somebody like me, and organized it into a daily action plan. So
Yeah.
everybody needs to go get that app for that reason alone, but also you guys explaining that in a minute or less. Dude, I couldn't have learned the stuff that I had started applying for my ankles to help them out if I didn't know you and I wasn't in the gym
Mm.
with you, like, or I didn't follow you on Instagram. That's some complex stuff. Like, this is new
Yeah.
world, modern science stuff. And you and Natalie are pioneering that. So in order for people to actually learn these new methodologies, they have to go follow you guys. They have to download the app. Like, if they do it any other way, they're just going to spend 6 years trying to learn it all like I did. Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'm
true.
really, really super appreciative that you guys have put that out, because that's going to blow up and it's going to help a ton of people. I know it will.
Yeah.
Who
Agreed. Agreed.
serve best? Like, if there was one person you could describe, is this the person that's dealing with chronic pain? Is this a person who wants to move better? How would you describe it?
So I would say, obviously, just the two examples, yes and yes, 100%. I guess it's tough, right? Like, our demographic of people who are following us and asking us questions, I feel like are really between two different categories. They're between people who are already fitness enthusiasts, right? So they're already going to the gym, or they already have a routine, or they have a program that they're already following. And it's just kind of looking, right, to deepen their understanding of
Yeah.
like, fuck, why does this thing keep being achy? People tell me I need to stretch more. Someone tells me that my ankle mobility is kind of, is off. That is like the type of people we want. We want like people who are just kind of like, where do we start? Right. And like
Yes.
you said, do you want to start at, everyone starts at level one, ground one, but do you want to start in a process where maybe you're diving down the rabbit hole with a bunch of different concepts and techniques that might take you a while for you to finally grasp something that you can do on a daily basis? Or do you want to just get to something that is going to be like, just tell me what to do, tell me how to do it, and
Yeah.
just make sure that it's going to benefit me. Make sure that I don't need to come back to the app and be like, no, none of this stuff worked. I didn't understand any of this.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have not gotten any feedback yet like that. So I would say that that's one category. And then I think the next category is someone who's just kind of like, I've wanted to get into fitness. If I do get into fitness, I just want to make sure it's more for like my health, right? Somebody who's just concerned with their health. Like, I'm not doing this to be the biggest, baddest person in the room. I'm just doing this for the benefits of what exercise could do for my mind and my body. And I
Yeah.
think that's like where like the two kind of different types of people are. I think the outliers are like the athletes and like some of the middle school and high school athletes that I'm able to kind of serve on social media. But I would say that those two are like our main audiences right there.
Yeah, I would agree too. From an outside looking in at y'all's brand, and we'll talk about that after this recording as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you nailed it, man. And you guys are going to be able to help those two audiences so much. And I just really hope that people take action in downloading the app. I know that in order to do it, they need to go to y'all's website. That's how you guys
Yeah.
can organize that journey the best. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope people go to durableathlete.com. The app is on y'all's homepage already. It's beautiful. I've checked it out, and I'm really proud of you guys. So, Cristian, man, I love you. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me on the 23 Hours podcast. I'm really excited for people to hear some of the really complex topics that you kind of just dumbed down today, man. I've always respected you for that. Like, you're really, really good at taking just an industry in terms of mobility, flexibility, and movement that's really confusing for a lot of people, and dumbing it down. I've seen you do it at certifications. I've seen you do it with your clients. I've seen you do it in classes. So I respect you for that, man. You're incredible at that. So thank you so much, man.
Hell yeah, bro. I appreciate that, man. I feel just as strongly about you, both myself and Natalie. So thank you, bro. I wouldn't jump on any chumps podcast. You know what I mean? You gotta have some respect for my guy.
I know it, man. And I appreciate you so much. So, guys, go durableathlete.com, check it out. And then go follow Christian on Instagram, right? That's where you want to send these
Yeah,
people at Cristian
yeah,
Plascencia. And I'm going to have that link in the description of the bio.
cool, awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler. Appreciate y'all,
I
man.
appreciate you, man.